You know, J.D. Vance is an embarrassment to the law school I attended, but the fact is he's telling us something we should have already known. Last week, I said it. They aren't going to follow court orders. They've decided to push the boundaries of executive power by essentially overstepping Congress's authority. George Conway recently took a strong stance against Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. It's a train wreck, and I promise you won't want to miss it. George doesn't just criticize, he has the evidence to back it up, distributing it like Halloween candy. J.D. Vance completely exposed Trump, and let's just say George isn't holding back. It's a brutal takedown that's equally entertaining. The extent of how bad things have gotten for these two might surprise you. Hold on tight, it might hurt. Trump, we know, is essentially like a Russian doll of lies. He'll lie, then lie about lying, then lie about lying, and so on. George Conway revealed much more than just Trump's lies. Even their followers had to start questioning if they were still aligned with reality after he dismantled them with his arguments. Somehow, Vance convinced an entire state to send him to the Senate, despite having a reputation as flimsy as a sandcastle in a hurricane. The only solution, it seems, is for people to take to the streets. That's the only way to enforce the rule of law when courts lack any real enforcement power, relying on the United States Marshals and the Department of Justice, essentially the executive branch. If the executive branch decides not to comply with court orders, it undermines the rule of law in the federal government, and we need to start focusing on and discussing this. That's where these individuals are heading. J.D. Vance, a self-described intellectual, somehow convinced the people of Ohio that his book on rural life qualified him to speak on government. His qualifications are roughly equivalent to someone who reads a Wikipedia article for 30 seconds before starting a podcast. In politics, he often uses sound bites to appear more intelligent than he actually is, offering no real substantial analysis. There's no clear end to his rhetoric, and the only course left is for people to demand a government that obeys the law, which will likely require public protests. Without a functional system, that's all that's left. Vance is the embodiment of hollow rhetoric, someone who works hard to seem smart while hoping no one notices his lack of real understanding. As for J.D. Vance, what did he learn at law school? I think what he took away from Yale Law School is that it teaches you to be abstract, but it's a strange place to study law since many end up not practicing law at all. However, if you really want to learn law, you can. But it's also possible there's not enough focus on practical advocacy there. I can't speak from personal experience since it's been 40 years since I was there. Then there's Donald Trump, who is the real-life equivalent of a poor reality TV show. When someone who takes pride in winning at chess faces a grandmaster, it's like watching a child lose repeatedly. Trump's continual inaccuracies are astounding. Every time he opens his mouth, it's like watching a child try to explain quantum physics. His political views are as shallow as a puddle. While it's somewhat amusing, it's concerning that anyone ever took him seriously. There was a bipartisan immigration bill aimed at solving some of these issues, but Trump didn't want to fix it. He actively pushed the House to vote against it because he didn't want a rational system, he wanted failure. He doesn't want law. George Conway has been criticizing Vance and Trump with the precision of a surgeon. Watching an adult mock a pair of overstimulated children who somehow found themselves on a political stage is like seeing a bull in a china shop. While Vance and Trump appear to be stumbling through a world they barely understand, Conway's ability to expose their follies is a masterclass in political humor. Conway quietly steps forward and reveals their contradictions, as though they were flimsy falsehoods held together by desperation, hope, and a lack of self-awareness. Conway doesn't mince words when it comes to Trump, pointing out the absurdity of the former president's many mistakes, his continuous cycle of unfulfilled promises, and his apparent lack of sound judgment. However, it is Vance who receives the brunt of Conway's criticism. Conway is unimpressed by Vance's entire political career, which seems like a poor imitation of genuine ambition. He can't help but emotionally react to things, and he doesn't shy away from calling out Vance's behavior, labeling him as narcissistic and manipulative. This is why it's crucial not to normalize him or treat him as a typical individual, because he isn't. Conway exposes Vance's obvious attempts to pander to the most extreme elements of the Republican Party, his fixation on associating with them, and his hunger for attention. The most remarkable thing is that Conway does all of this in a calm, controlled manner, as though humorously pointing out flaws in a child's art project. Watching Conway dismantle these two is smooth, cutting, and funny. It's like watching a comedian perform stand-up, But instead of jokes, he's delivering slow-motion truth bombs. The real sorrow in this situation is that neither Trump nor Vance seem aware that they are being mocked, despite their overblown self-portrayals. Trump's entire political image rests on the notion that he is a self-made genius, even though his track record is filled with bankruptcy and tax evasion, far from hard work. Yet, he continues to attract supporters who claim that he is the right leader for the country, despite the absurdity of this belief. It's akin to seeing someone enter a burning building and then claiming they're the only one capable of extinguishing the flames. Everyone tends to overthink Trump's actions. There's no strategy behind him. He exists in a world where only his opinion matters, and it's clear that he doesn't care about anyone else. People are either useful to him or disposable. Despite spending most of his life in privileged circles, Trump's political career has been built on the claim that he represents the working class. Yet, his life, marked by a massive trust fund, offers no insight into the struggles of those he claims to understand. Vance, similarly, comes from wealth and luxury, but he has the audacity to act as if he truly understands the needs of everyday Ohioans. Conway performs a public service by dismantling their narratives. He reminds us that Trump and his supporters aren't the only players in the political circus. The real focus should be on those willing to speak uncomfortable truths, regardless of how many people they upset, and expose the illusion of the so-called powerful. Conway gently underscores that Trump's entire character is a fragile construct, built on lies, exaggerations, and a bloated ego. Trump has convinced many that he is untouchable, but his inability to lead has been glaringly evident. Every time he speaks, his ridiculous remarks are met with applause, as though he's playing a game where reality doesn't apply. The truth, however, is that Trump's record shows time and time again his lack of leadership and his failure to deliver on the promises he makes.